All right, very good. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 14th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. If everyone would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can you certify a quorum for us, please?
Yes, sir. Chesterfield County, Chair Carroll.
I'm here.
Henrico County, Vice Chair Nelson. Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
New Kent County, Mr. Moyer.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. McClung.
Here.
City of Richmond, Mayor Stoney. Commonwealth Transportation Board, Mr. Davis.
Here.
Have we heard from the mayor?
The mayor's staff informed me that Councilwoman Nye would be attending in his place as his delegate.
So we'll try and install a little about that. Okay, so we don't have anybody who's actually responsive. Here we go. Good morning.
How are you?
So we haven't had anybody who is going to participate remotely?
No, sir.
Okay, so we don't need to do that. Has everybody had an opportunity to, good morning.
How are you?
Good. Do you need a copy of the agenda?
Yes, please.
We'll get someone.
Got
Get
it?
you one.
Okay, thanks.
We'll wait a second till you get that.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm late.
Oh, no, it's okay, traffic, you know, it happens. Come to Chesterfield County.
Transportation problem.
This morning.
Yeah, let's get a board together, see if they can, maybe they can come up with some solutions. Yeah. Oh, boy. All right, has everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda for today? All right, is there any amendments to the agenda that are required? Nope. Not seeing none, we'll consider the agenda to be approved. First order of business is the election of CVTA Finance Committee officers. So I'm gonna make a motion, and then we'll open the floor up for other motions anybody may have. I think it's pretty much been pretty established since I've been part of the CVTA that I think that there should be an opportunity for all jurisdictions that are part of the CVTA to participate in a leadership role. I call that shared sacrifice. Quite frankly, because there is more responsibility, quite frankly, when you serve in those capacities, whether you're, on your own board back home, or if you serve here or Plan RVA or the TPO. And so I would like to make a motion to elect as chair for 2024-2025 Neil Spoonhour of Goochland, and for vice chair, John Moyer of New Kent. Would either one of you accept, if nominated, the position?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second is made. Do you have any discussion? Poll the members, please. I know it's his voice vote, but I'd rather have a recorded vote.
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour.
Aye.
Mr. Moyer.
Aye.
Mr. McClung.
Aye.
Ms. Nye. Aye. Motion carries.
All right, so now pass this over to Neil. Unless you want to change seats, you can come over here if you want.
Thank you. All right,
All right,
here we go. All right, so the first order of business is the approval of the July 10th minutes. They've been in your packet. Hopefully you have a chance to review them. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Becker. Thank you, Plunk. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will now move to our public comment period. Do we have anybody from the public here or has requested to speak?
Not received any requests.
All right, thank you. With that, I will close the public comment period, and we will move to the CVTA Finance Committee Chair's report. I guess that's me. I had my stump speech already, but I didn't get to use it. But I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. Mr. Carroll, thank you for championing us in this endeavor. I have big shoes to fill. I've been watching the Finance Committee from afar for 4 years now, so I'm very excited to get in and do a lot of the hard work. So thank you, and I look forward to serving with you, John.
Thank you.
Do some good stuff.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
since outgoing Chair, one thing I do want to say, I want to thank you, Mr. McClung, for your service. I know you've been coming off the Finance Committee, this will be your last meeting. I appreciate your time and effort that you put in, and we look forward to continue seeing you at the regular CVTA meetings.
Yep, certainly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, now we move right on. Wait, I run an efficient meeting, don't I? CVTA Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one item that I did have and is listed on the agenda is on page 7 of your agenda packet. One of the things that we actually discussed in earnest at our last meeting on July 10th was the performance of the regional funds that have been reinvested while waiting to be programmed for project costs. As you know, we have an allocations plan where all of the regional projects are essentially slotted in for a fiscal year for whatever the upcoming costs are going to be, right-of-way construction, you name it. But while those funds are potentially waiting to be allocated to particular projects, we've been able to work with the Longnecker, who's the Chesterfield County Treasurer and CVTA fiscal agent, to reinvest those funds as much as possible in short-term options so that we can start to earn interest and keep that funding moving forward and growing for the CVTA. So Ms. Longnecker is here with us today, and I wanted to continue that conversation. We had discussed at our last meeting, as I said, some possible options, and I wanted to present those today, and those are on page 7. 3 options that I immediately thought of that I think are up for discussion, and we could certainly ask Ms. Longnecker to come forward if that's the desire of the committee to talk about these 3 and any others, and tell us whether we can do things or not. So the first one would be continued reinvestment of the funds with the goal of interest earnings growth. So essentially continuing what we're doing. We can apply the interest earnings to regionally identified projects. Right now, for 2024, we're at 11.6 million in interest earnings, and there are multiple existing projects that could be either fully funded or partially funded with that dollar amount. Or we could set it aside as the working capital reserve that has been identified now and adopted in the CVTA financial policies and procedures. The policy requires 3 months of the budgeted annual CVTA regional funds to be included in this reserve, which is roughly 6.5 million per month. So we're looking at, close to 20 million. So this time, there have been no funds set aside for the reserve. So this would be a big step forward in having that established. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think this is an information item at this point, so I'm just looking to take direction from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Board, any comments, any thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
I have a question for Ms. Longnecker.
Okay.
Rebecca? I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask it anyway.
All right, then let me answer your question that you already know the answer to. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. First of all, thank you very much for all the great work your team has done in investing the CVTA dollars and I even say that on behalf of Chesterfield, what you've done for us with our funds as well, on behalf of the taxpayers. This is a significant amount of money that's been raised through investment. Of course, we have a big amount of money in that pot to begin with. If we were to decide to, other than taking $6.5 million and putting it towards the reserve, if we were to take some of the funds and allocate them to some of the projects, how quickly would we be able to get the funds?
It's available now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's available now. Anything that you're going to leave, the 6.5 million, would be left continuing to grow.
Yep.
We don't leave it just sitting in an account.
So if we decided, Mr. Chair, to do the $6.5 million, that could continue to grow, and then towards that 20 million that we need for the reserve, and then we could use some of the other funds, some of the projects. And I guess, Mr. Chair, I have a question for staff, and that is, have we looked at what projects are actually ready to come out of the ground that could utilize the funds?
Mr. Chair, we do have a list to start from, but I would certainly want to put that in front of the TAC and work with them to identify, a top three or whatever the slot is for that amount of funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I think Mr. Carroll brings up a good point. So if we get those things in front of the TAC, I think it's just important to let TAC know the funding mechanism for them, because it would be different than a funding mechanism normally used. And so not only do we need some technical data from TAC, but we would also need them to understand that this may be a strategic redeployment of funds. It's not just a normal funding source. And understanding, I think, that landscape may help them give us an idea instead of just, hey, we've got a couple $1 million over here and we just need to reallocate it. Because we'd have some financial decisions we'd have to make if we do pull those out, depending on what, one of which is, what could we look at for potential earnings if we kept it in? And what might that fund over and above what it would fund now? And I just think there's a lot of strategy that goes into that. So.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Carroll?
I think one of the other discussions that we had in full committee recently when we were given an update on the wayfinding plan, now that we've come up with a wayfinding plan, if I remember correctly, we actually didn't have funds set aside for the wayfinding plan. And I think TAC is working on a estimate for us, is that right? On the wayfinding plan?
We have that.
We have an estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the cost estimate,
Okay.
1.1 million.
And just, I would ask, Mr. Chair, that if when we bring this forward in the future for consideration, that's something we need to look at as well. Because we are trying to figure a way to fund that, and that's not part of what we've actually funded. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sure.
And if I may, in response to the statement over here, we will continue, this is the regional funds, we will continue monthly to put new money into the investments.
Right.
So it's not that we're depleting anything, it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify, thank you for that. Yeah, I know it wasn't a full depletion, it was just a matter of balancing. If we held and candlesticks moved in a different way, then what might we be foregoing if we went, or maybe it is strategically better to do it now. I just want to have a full picture, so thank you for that caveat.
Mr. Parsons, what is the current plan? You said that we have it in our policy to require 3 months of budgeted funds. What's the plan to grow that fund currently?
We don't have a clear direction aside from our next round of regional funding. I think that would be the natural place, unless there are opportunities like this to build on that reserve. So we're looking at spring of '26 would be the next round of regional funding. This policy was updated, I believe, in late spring of this year, so it hasn't been in place too long.
Okay.
But at this point, aside from pulling funds away from a project that has already received an allocation, our reserve is fairly small. So this would be, in my opinion, this would be a good opportunity to start building that up.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, sir. So, then the next time you go around with monies like 26, maybe one of the projects will be to have the 3-month supply of funds. You know, that could be one of our projects, that takes care of that, we don't have to think about that again. The other thing is, if we do use some of the non-6.5, I would think the use of those funds now would mean costs will be a lot different than if we would do projects a year, 2 years from now. So I appreciate the interest we're getting, but and how things are going right now, I would think something done right now would be of more benefit than waiting on a project that isn't.
It's a very valid point, yeah.
I agree. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I would just, I would direct staff to have a prepared list for the next finance committee meeting for us to be able to review and make recommendations to the full committee.
Okay, I want to make sure, would you like that to go through TAC first before it comes to us?
Well, that's what I'm referring to. Staff will work with TAC to
TAC
go
to bring it.
forward with that.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
Mr. Chair, one clarification on that.
Yep.
Request. Would you like, I have heard some, basically an assumption that 6.5 will be set aside to start the reserve?
No
Would you
assumption.
like options?
I would like, I think all options should be looked at, yeah. That would be my request, Mr. Chair.
everybody good with that? Mr. Parsons, you have what you need?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay, anything else for your report?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, now we have the CVTA activities report, financial activities and investment reports, Mr. Parsons.
Yes, sir, thank you. That's, as we finish that discussion and start this one, I'd turn your attention to page 8. This is, well, I don't see the investment report.
Actually, I don't see it either. I don't know if Rebecca has it with her.
I do not, and I did see it in the.
Okay, she's gonna bring it up.
Okay, we'll start with page 8, while Janice is getting that up, and we can look at the March tax activity reported June 30th, 2024. We are continuing the growth and allocation of both sources of regional revenue from the sales and use tax and the local fuels tax. Our year-to-date transfers to the local distribution is 91.3 million distributed among our membership, and then a similar amount set aside for the regional fund and payments to GRTC. Lifetime to date, we are now approaching, we're on our way to 400 million lifetime total distributions, both local and regional. And I would expect that over the course of this fiscal year, we will surpass that amount. We do, as you can see in the local fuels tax, the second line across there is some fluctuation from month to month in the reporting. We expected that, and that is why the discussions that we've been having about possible issuance of bonds is leaving the fuels tax out. So that's a good indicator of why that is not a consideration, because it is not as consistent as the sales and use tax, and seeing the consistent growth that is bringing in. So I would say that this is reflective of the conversations that we've been having, and all indications are that it's going to continue in this way into the foreseeable future. Okay, thank you, Janice. So on the screen is our earnings report. Can you X out of the side and zoom in?
Yes.
So yes, as I mentioned in the staff report, we're now just over 11.6 million in FY24 in cumulative interest earnings. This funding is available to be used for other uses as needed, as prioritized by the CVTA. So we will, as instructed, staff will be bringing back some possible options for the finance committee to consider at its September meeting. At the same time, we're gonna continue working with Ms. Longenacre's office to understand options for reinvestment of funds, as our, revenues continue to come in and grow. Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions on either of those reports.
Okay.
But otherwise, that's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Parsons. Any questions for Mr. Parsons?
One question on the, I hadn't paid attention to it until you mentioned it, but the fuels tax line, February activity is $5 million and March activity is $4 million. It seems like a pretty big decrease into March activity as compared to February activity. Didn't know if there's any reasoning behind that, if there was weather phenomenon that occurred in March that didn't occur in February. It just seems like a big drop.
It is a big drop, and thank you for raising that, Mr. Davis. We don't typically get any detailed reports from the tax department, but it's a curious thing, and I would be happy to make some requests and see if we can get any kind of indicators on the reason why those revenues have changed.
I mean, the sales tax is relatively stable throughout, and there's a significant drop in fuels tax for that month.
Yeah, Rex brings up a tremendous point. If you go back and even look at September, which is, it's interesting looking at the months that we top over 5 million, September, December, and then February. They're odd months. I'm curious to see, at least go back and take a look at what the summer months did last year during what was usually peak travel time. So it is interesting of the odd months that are having the highest totals. December, I could see it, holiday travel, I could see that, but September, it's usually people are done with vacations, back to school.
That's like June's at 3.8,
Yeah,
which is the lowest. I know work out some expenditure.
so I don't know.
I wonder if it's a lag because when the taxes are actually collected, so all the receipts come in one month and then the taxes collected the next month.
Well, it is. It's a 3-month lag. That's why it says, for September, September tax activity, it's actually reported December of that year, so.
But it's still for the month that it was
That's correct.
accumulated, so.
Right.
And it just didn't make sense to me that March would be below February. February's the shortest month of the year as far as I can recall.
We had 29 now, but.
Yeah, it did have 29 days.
We
That
did.
one
I
day.
believe you. So,
Okay, anything else for Mr. Parsons? Mr. Parsons? All right, now we move to TAC. We've got a new face.
Good morning,
Morning, Barbara.
Barb Smith, to give you a report on CVTA TAC. Our first order of business on Monday's meeting was to elect the chair and vice chair. I was elected as chair. I represent Chesterfield County on TAC. And Austin Goyne will serve as vice chair, and he represents Goochland. We took action to recommend the execution of 5 project agreements for projects funded with CVTA regional dollars that are being administered by Henrico, the City of Richmond, and VDOT. That includes the Fall Line Trail Design Build number 2, which VDOT's administering. As we're closing out the books on FY '24, we had an information item to discuss the status of the last quarter of FY '24 expenditure reports coming from localities. And that's just reporting on how local CVTA funds were spent in '24. And also getting the FY '24 annual certifications from localities, certifying that the funds were spent correctly. We also discussed or took action to recommend approval of the FY '25 local allocation plan. So getting into FY '25, we outline how we expect to spend local funds, and we get that plan from each locality. So that'll be coming to the full authority shortly for their approval. We also discussed a draft document summarizing potential management responsibilities for the Fall Line Trail. And this was drafted by CVTA staff and reflects conversations that have happened at the Fall Line Trail Working Group. And among the Capital Trail Foundation gave us a presentation at the Fall Line Trail Working Group. So we have this draft document that will go to the Fall Line Trail Study Work Group for further review and discussion of next steps. And that's focused on the management of the Fall Line Trail. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
I did want to take a second and thank Ms. Clark. My goodness, what we've asked of you over the last 3-4 years in your leadership, you've, in my opinion, have served with distinction, and I've been incredibly impressed with how you've helped us grow as an organization. And that group is a hardworking group that does a lot. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome, all right. Moving on, back to Mr. Parsons for the 24 year-end report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The 11 by 17 folded sections in your agenda are the next items, starting on page 11. As Ms. Smith mentioned, TAC has taken a look at these, but we wanted to put it in front of the authority as well, or the Finance Committee. This is shown as an information item right now. So the first page on page 11 through 15 is our quarterly expenditures but for the fourth quarter of FY24. So essentially our annual report of expenditures for our previous fiscal year. This is a listing of all of the funds, the CVTA funds that were locally distributed that have been applied to projects or other transportation uses by the member jurisdictions over the past year. So this is what we are going to keep on record as evidence of the proper use of CVTA locally allocated funds. And this, along with the signed certifications that are coming from each jurisdiction, will be our record that CVTA did what it was supposed to do and followed its legislative directive to expend these transportation dollars. So this has gone through and was actually prepared with information from each member jurisdiction. So my understanding is that it is all correct. We will certainly update this as needed if I get any new information from TAC members, but at this point, this is considered a final product for the last fiscal year and our reporting.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Parsons? Mr. Parsons, I do have a question. Is there any way to tell from this if these are local funds or regional?
These are all local funds.
All local
This does
funds.
not include any of the regional
Okay,
funds.
great.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
one of the wonderful duties that you'll get to do as chair is you get to sign off on the SPA agreements with the localities.
Right.
And also on their expenditures as they come back with a report to let you know how they spend the funds. And so you'll start getting those emails and have an opportunity to sign off, and you'll see that many of these projects are what you're signing off
That wasn't part of the agreement.
on. All right. Like I said, shared sacrifice.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Anything else for Mr. Parsons? All right, if not, we will move to other business, and we're going to discuss the Fault Line Trail revisions.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I can go back.
Oh, okay.
Page 16 with the green header is the other part of that section of reporting. So this is, as you can see on the top, this is our FY25 local allocation plan. So this is kind of the counterpoint to the year-end reporting. Everything that's in this table, so page 16, 17, and 18, reflects the intended use of local CVTA dollars for the fiscal year that we are currently in, so for FY25. So you could start, see there's 6 items there for Ashland Those 6 items are what Ashland intends to use CVTA local dollars for the remainder of the current fiscal year, and likewise for each of the other member jurisdictions. So if you want to see not just what has been spent, but what kind of work is going on right now and is expected to be used for our current fiscal year, this is where you'll find that information. And this is a living document. It's not, it doesn't have to be adopted or taken action on. It's our record of what the intent is, so that we can then compare that with the quarterly reporting and see if there's any outliers. Just a good way to keep track of project expenditures. And this will be updated by member jurisdictions as needed. If at some point during the year priorities change, things happen with infrastructure that you don't always know what the priorities are going to be right away. So this is, again, just a reporting table, and be happy to take any questions on that.
Mr. Chair.
Just to
Go ahead, Joe.
Chet, Mr. Parsons, the total amount that can be used for the year by the local jurisdiction is reflected in what numbers on this table?
That's a great question, Mr. Moyer. The total amount that can be used is not really known. We're operating off the projections on what the revenues are going to be. So we have a ballpark in terms of what we can expect, and I think as each jurisdiction reports what they intend to use the funding for, it's taken with that kind of lens that, we may not always have that amount.
But if I look at this for year to date, which I believe is 10 months in this, 10 or 11 months here, UCAN has $2 million in their shared allocation. So that means we would be able to spend somewhere around $2 million.
Yes, between previous fiscal years and the current one. Yes, I mean, everyone is gauging their funding amounts on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll, would you have a follow-up?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to make a comment. If you look at these lists of transportation projects that are being done regionally, this is incredible. And this is the type of information I wish that many of the people in the community would actually get to see. Because these projects are being fast-tracked now regionally because of the CVTA. Localities would not have had the opportunity to do these projects as quick as they are, having to submit only 12 projects, for example, for Smart Scale a year, or 10 projects a year, and compete statewide. So this is really an incredible list, quite frankly, and I don't know which way, I don't know how we could possibly get this information out to the community any more than we've tried to do, but other than post it on our website, and I don't know how we track if anybody clicks on it for that matter, but hopefully maybe when we get our new website, that'll be something we can track. But I would encourage all of us to make sure we share this information as much as possible with our fellow board members at our jurisdictions, and then perhaps even as a special report in our board meetings about, because it is amazing, quite frankly.
Maybe somebody with an advertising background can look into that.
Maybe.
I do have a question that something Mr. Moyer said, Mr. Parsons, and this might be a question for Mr. Gregory as well. I believe that in the bylaws or in the code, there are time frames in which the localities have to spend the money and or allocate it. I believe it's a year or 2 years. Do we do any sort of auditing of that from that side of it? Because I think there's language in there that says if the monies aren't spent or aren't used, then that you would potentially forego future funds. So are we monitoring that?
I think we'd have to look into that, Mr. Chair, but I think it needs to be said that everything that we have been discussing today in both of these tables is just the half of the funding, the local funding. Right. Once that, in terms of that funding, once it's gone to the jurisdictions, it's not CVTA's consideration anymore. So the spending requirements or anything else is not a CVTA concern, it's local dollars, once those revenues are distributed. I think there may be something in the language about the regional dollars, and we've got that in our prioritization framework and all the other rules that are set aside for regional spending. But the local dollars are local dollars, and that was part of the reason why we have that three bucket framework, is because it was so important to the member jurisdictions to have access to those funds to use for whatever needs were identified.
Transportation.
They still have an obligation to comply with the code
Yeah.
requirements
Right.
and the reporting requirements back to the CVTA, which is what Chet was describing earlier, as far as their certification that they're in compliance and that these projects are in compliance.
Maybe I was thinking of the regional piece of it. Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, that is the reason why we're actually working on a D-class, decertification? Deallocation policy to deal with that particular issue, that for some reason, for example, we allocate in our transportation plan for 2 years funding for a project, and it doesn't get smart scale matching, and they can't figure a way, the locality can't figure a way to fund the whole thing. So we're working on a policy that TAC is reviewing right now to bring forward back to the finance committee, and we'll see where it lands.
So just to kind of make that for people listening, so those are the funds that, let's say Goochland says, hey, we have a $20 million project, and CVTA allocates $2 million for matching funds for how many recycles is determined, it doesn't get it, that money needs to come back into the pot, so to speak.
It could be chosen, yes, Mr. Chair, that's what we're working on now, is a policy to govern how that would happen, which we don't have in place.
We're growing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
As Mr. Carroll was talking about, how do we get this message out? For one, I got a little town hall coming up Thursday, so I got some things I'm gonna talk about. One of the things is, I don't think there's anything easier to see your tax money going for than these local transportation funds that are being paid for by their tax money. And in Buchanan, a lot of that gas tax is not our tax money, it's somebody else's. And at the end of the presentation, I always go, make sure you buy your gas in Buchanan. Okay, so, we're trying to get that word out because of how these are items here on our list coming up that we wouldn't be able to do as a jurisdiction with our money. So we appreciate all this.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
When are they building Buc-ee's?
That will take us from fifth spot to fourth spot, okay? By 27, yeah. It's about roughly 70,000 a month.
I can't wait to come.
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Parsons, anything else on
No, sir, thank you.
you ready to move into the following, Chair?
Yes. Okay, so we are now looking at page 19 of your agenda packet. And this is a request from Henrico County to consider shifting regional fund allocations amongst a set of projects. So a little background, April of 2023, at our regular meeting, CVTA approved a standard project agreement between the CVTA and Henrico County as a locality, allocating funds for a group of projects that are all related to the fall line. This may have been the first locality spa that the CVTA considered. It was early on. But it essentially grouped all of the projects amongst what you see on the bulleted list. Park Street, Lakeside Community Trail Phases 1, 2, and 3, Brook Hilliard Road Diet, Villa Park Phase, and Longdale Trail. These 7 project segments were approved in bulk, as each section represented a portion of the fall line that Henrico County was developing concurrently. As the construction has progressed, plans and schedules have necessitated a shift in funding between those 7 segments so that progress can continue as planned. So Henrico County is requesting that the CVTA consider a shift in CVTA regional funds between several of the previously funded fall line trail segments. The total allocation amount of $35.8 million as listed in the staff report is not proposed to change. So they're not requesting additional funds, they're requesting a shift in how those funds are distributed. So the details of the request are in three pieces. The first is that CVTA 0009, Fall Line Trail Lakeside Community Trail Phase 1, shift $462,000 to this phase from CVTA 14, which would have a revised total CVTA allocation of $858,504. The second one is that Fall Line Trail Lakeside Community Trail Phase 3 have a shift in $497,000 to this phase from the same one, CVTA 14, for a revised total CVT allocation of $3.57 million. And then finally, that Longdale Trail would shift $959,000 from this phase to CVTA 9 and CVTA 11 for a revised total CVT allocation of $25.132 million. The motion is to recommend CVTA approval of a revised Appendix A. So this is a appendix of the standard project agreement. We would revise that to show the shift in funding, and that would reflect the updated funding allocation split as proposed by Henrico County. Mr. Chair, I believe that Henrico staff is here if there's any more clarification that the Finance Committee would like to request, but at this point, it's a fairly straightforward request, and I would, staff supports the action.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Any comments?
Mr. Chair, just a clarification. One, what we're requesting the Finance Committee to do is to make a recommendation of approval for the full CVTA for the change.
That is correct.
I have all the confidence in the world that Henrico will do a fantastic job on building out their sections of the Fall Line Trail. So, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to recommend the CVTA Finance Committee approve the changes as moving forward to the full committee for consideration.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any discussion? Any questions for Henrico? Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else in the forward here, Mr. Parsons?
No, sir.
All right. Now, next on our other business, item number 2, or Chesterfield Transportation Bond Debrief. We have, Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Carroll.
If I might, I had requested Mr. Harris to come to just give a brief update on what our experience was going through the bonding process, utilizing our local CVTA dollars. I do realize that most of the jurisdictions that are part of the CVTA understand how bonding works. This exercise is more about sharing the process that we went through and some of the things that we experienced that would hopefully maybe make it easier if some of the other localities decide to utilize CVTA dollars for bonding in the future, and that was why I asked Mr. Harris to come here.
Well, welcome, Mr. Harris.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this relatively brief, but I've had the opportunity to be with this body, several times as you all have explored the future potential to bond against some of these revenue streams. And, we certainly felt locally and through Mr. Carroll's leadership, that we had enough data points, as you guys discussed already here today, to be able to go out and bond against just our local 50% stream. And so, talk to Chet, and I'm just gonna share a couple of things I think we learned through the process that we weren't entirely sure how they were gonna work out. It is a different transaction than just sort of our local geo bond, things that we might sell at the local level. So we're $30 million, we're talking, rough round numbers, $30 million our local 50% on an annual basis. So we partitioned off 2/3 of that for debt service. That's kind of how we modeled it. And so that yielded us on a 25-year maturity, $310 million of proceeds. We sold in May, closed in June. So we are liquid and off and running. Chess and her team, with those funds. We did get them rated by all three agencies, and we were rated one notch below, where we are from our AAA. So, it was received very, very well. Again, we went to the market trying to raise 300 was our target. We received $1.5 billion in orders. It was a negotiated transaction. So, I think that's one of my messages today. Certainly the marketplace feels comfortable with the CVTA structure, the history of it, the there's enough data for them to bite on this. So we were way oversubscribed, so we were able to push the yields lower as we worked the transaction down to that number. So we were just a hair under 4% on the rate for those bonds. So, saved us even a little bit more in terms of our annual expense. So what that means for us is we have a larger pay-as-you-go program. So we're basically 2/3 servicing the debt, and then we're gonna have, $10 to $11 million, at least out of the gates, dedicated to our pay-go. And any growth that we get in our local funds will all, be to the benefit of our pay-go program. So that was certainly beneficial. We didn't, it's, kind of cuts both ways. We weren't required to do a debt service reserve for our transaction, really because it's got some relationship to the locality. If you guys, my expectation would be if you sold as an entity, you would be required to do that because you don't have the other reserves or revenues available to cover any shortfalls. But if you bond out as individual localities, one of the nice things is we didn't have to take some of our existing, stream from CVTA and set that aside for debt service reserve. We were able to keep that in projects. So that was again something we didn't know how it was going to shake out. But again, very well received transaction. It's actually considered, the way we structured it, a sort of a standalone credit, a new credit. So it doesn't crowd out any of our ability as Chesterfield County to borrow for other traditional capital needs, schools, library, whatever that might be. So the rating agencies, see it separate and apart, so it doesn't encroach on any of our debt policies or any of that capacity that we have. So you don't have that sort of infighting in terms of which need falls to the surface for priority. So I think those are the big key things that we discovered. But I certainly would encourage you to look at in your home localities, and certainly I think we're happy to lend a hand or share any of our experiences with you individually or as a body now that we have gone through. But at the end of the day, it was very easy and again very well received in the marketplace. So happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any questions from you? Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. How long did the process take, like from beginning to end?
So it took a little bit longer than, again, it's if one of you were to do it in your own locality, we'd be happy to share our documents and our structure. So it took us a little bit of time not having a off-the-shelf kind of example to go off of like we would for a geo transaction. But I would say all in probably 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
But a lot of that was just sort of exploring the different structures. But if we were going to do it again tomorrow, it would be 45 days, pretty quick. Yeah.
Okay. And then did you all borrow for a specific project or just
that's a great
for
point.
general debt capacity?
Yeah, so if you read our bond documents and all the conversations we have with the board and all the public engagement that we did lay out specific projects that we will try to target. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to leave ourselves maximum flexibility. So it obviously has to fall within the code section of transportation. But if a source opens up for one of the identified projects, we have the ability to swap that out and put something else in with this $300 million. So it's transportation, we've got the ones we think will work, but we have the ability within the 3-year spend down to be able to move those dollars around to other transportation needs or opportunities that might arise.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So you're basically leveraging your side of the local money
Yes, sir.
to get more to spend quicker.
That's right. Yeah, we got as Mr. Carroll can attest, we have a large, sort of backlog of projects. They're not getting any cheaper every year, so,
Right.
we just thought it was a good time to start knocking those down. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions, Mr. Prince?
Yeah, I guess just a couple points to Mr. Moyer's just recent comment. I think that it's a similar process that CVTA would consider, but it would be with the regional funds. So we would have a reserve that would set aside a portion of the regional funds to leverage additional spending through the issuance. So and I think that everyone, Matt did a great job introducing it, but it's a slightly different structure from what Chesterfield did to what CVTA would consider based on the nature of the agency and the source of funds and available backing. But I think this is great information. Thanks for thanks for coming and talking with us. As we move forward, I'll say it again because this is a good opportunity to say it. We're looking at two different paths. One is validating the CVTA as an agency to issue bonds, which is something that we continue talking about, and that's what Kaufman and Knowles has been speaking with us about. The other is the actual process and what Chesterfield just went through of identifying projects and the cap amounts and everything else that we would consider. So I would urge this committee to keep those two things somewhat separate. They can be done in parallel, but my priority right now is without the urgency of the committee behind us, the validation is first and foremost what we should be considering. And then, once we have that backing from the court, we can look at a project list and prioritize what we need and make that happen.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Matt, for being here today. I think I'm all about team building and helping each other out, and I do believe that we can always learn from each other, and so I always offer up staff. Unfortunately, sometimes they may not like it, but usually they do a spectacular job to help work regionally with our regional partners, with any questions that they may have or any knowledge and experience that we can share with them. I think helps all of us regionally, and it's not that I think in any way, shape, or form that Chesterfield County does it better than anybody else. If Enrico was doing something and they were ahead of us, I would hope that they would help us out. If Richmond was doing something and they were ahead of us, I would hope that they would help us out. And for any of the jurisdictions, I would say that, if there's wisdom to share with the group, I would hope that everybody would share it equally. I know sometimes we don't want to share our wisdom of what economic development projects we're working on. Yeah, I get that. But I do think from the transportation point, we're all in this together, and it's really about trying to help each other out. So Matt, I appreciate you coming, and you may get calls from some of the jurisdictions with questions, and I know that you all have the ability to answer them. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen.
Thank you.
So much. All right. Do any of the members have any comments they'd like to make? All right, seeing none, I will call this meeting adjourned until our next meeting, September 11th, here in the boardroom. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.
That's a good sign, under an hour first meeting.